Christopher Andrew Sabo, our guest coming up, was born in Detroit, Michigan in January of 1962. It's hard to believe he's now 61 years young, doesn't it? Gosh, it's hard to believe. His father was a plumber, a great golfer. As my dad just alluded a moment ago, his mom was a waitress. Sabo attended Detroit Catholic Central High School. He was a three-sport star. In hockey, a goalie, great golfer, still is now, and, of course, in baseball. He attended the University of Michigan, where he and Barry Larkin led the Wolverines to a College World Series. Sabo was drafted by the Reds in the second round of the 1983 Major League Draft. 5 years later, was the National League's Rookie of the Year, and in 1990 helped propel the Reds to a World Series title, an unbelievable World Series. 9 hits and 16 at-bats, 2 home runs, 5 knocked in. Chris Sabo would play in 3 All-Star games, and 3 times he was the best fielding defensive third baseman in the National League. Since retiring, he's had coaching stints in the Reds organization, also in summer ball, and helped relaunch the baseball program at the University of Akron. But most importantly, he has been a husband going all the way back to 1989 to his bride, Susan, and they are the mother and father of 3 children, Annie, Brooke, and Olivia. Of course, Annie you see regularly as part of the Reds television broadcast, hosting the pregame and postgame shows. Chris Sabo, boy, what a pleasure it is. My dad, Chris, said how much fun he had with you on the Reds Caravan. What was that like to get back out there on the Caravan again? It's been a while.
How you doing, Thom? Long time no talk. So
I know. You doing okay?
I'm great. I'm down here in Florida. I mean, it's 80 and sunny. I mean, how can you beat it? So
no, you cannot beat it. And I understand you're playing a lot of good golf right now. My dad told me you're really playing well. Is that safe to say?
I'm playing well. I mean, I have my days still. I'm 61 years old, so it takes a long time to get my body ready to play. So I got a routine I do about an hour every day in order to be able to play some golf. But I try to get out there 3 or 4 times a week.
Want to go back, Chris, to you growing up in Detroit, Michigan. I always love to ask our guests that we have on every Wednesday, paint a picture for us, Chris, of what life was like growing up in the Sabo household.
Well, it was interesting. It was pretty much me and my sister. We lived in Detroit, a little bit in Farmington, briefly, but it was great. I love Detroit. Obviously, I didn't know anything different. I was a big sports fan. My dad was a big Detroit Tigers, Detroit Red Wing guy, Lions. So sports were big in our family. And, back in those days, there weren't any video games or really very much on TV. So we were outside pretty much as soon as you got back from school until it was time to eat, and then back outside until it was dark.
You were living in that house, as you mentioned, with your sister, your mom, and dad. My dad was just sharing a few minutes ago about what a great golfer your dad was. But growing up, your mom, your dad, you were lucky to have them together. As you look back on it now and the kind of father that you are, the kind of husband that you are, or maybe it had something to do with your work ethic, or maybe it had something to do with anything imaginable. When you look back at the lessons you learned from your mom and dad, you would say the 1 or 2 most important things to this day now would be what?
Well, obviously hard work. My dad was a plumber. My mom was a waitress. My grandmother, my mom's mom, she was a waitress. I mean, she lived to be 100 years old. So I would say hard work and sticking to something. My dad used to always say that if you start something, try to finish it. So I think those are the 2 big things. And I mean, I still work hard. The body doesn't react like it did 40 years ago. But you do the best you can so you can have some kind of quality of life as you enter the bottom of the 9th inning of your life, so to speak. So that would be it. Obviously you pick up good things and bad things as you look back on your parents. Obviously there's some bad things, but there's plenty of good things. And so when you become a parent, you try to emphasize the good things. and I've been blessed with great health, great life. It's just been awesome. So I have nothing to look back and be embarrassed about or anything like that.
I want to walk through the three sports that you played because some might say they're very different, and maybe from an emotional standpoint, in the heat of a game or a day in, a day out routine, they certainly are very different. But, as I was sharing with you a little bit earlier, you were a goalie in hockey and a great goalie in hockey. It takes a different kind of guy, in my opinion, to be the goalie in a sport. I have a son that's a goalie in lacrosse and a very good one. And a goalie in hockey, you just get the snot beat out of you. But even though you have a defense around you in hockey or lacrosse or whatever to protect you, in many ways, it's sort of an individual moment. Can you stop the shot? Can you block the shot? Can you not do it? Golf, the same thing. You're out there walking around. There's not the noise. There's not the crowd, but it's still an individual sport. In baseball, you're at the plate. Yes, it's a team game, but it's a one-on-one matchup with a pitcher. Do you agree with that synopsis that there are a lot more similarities with those three things and maybe differences in those three things?
No, I agree. It's similar. You've known me for a long time. Your dad's known me for a long time. I'm pretty much an introverted guy anyway. I like people, but I'm just not outgoing as like my daughter Annie is or my wife. And all of those sports, like you just said, have the individual aspect to it. But except for golf, there's a team aspect to it also. In hockey, I was a good skater, and I always enjoyed being the goalie because I was the last line of defense. I mean, if I played well, I could dictate the outcome of a game. And conversely, if I played terrible, I could, have the outcome of the game because I played terrible. So that's what I loved about hockey. I loved all the sports. I still do. I mean, I played old man hockey until about 4 or 5 years ago, and I got bad arthritic feet, so I really can't put skates on anymore. But I agree. They're all different a little bit. But again, when you're batting, it's just you and the pitcher. Mm-hmm. I mean, Eric Davis, Barry Larkin's not going to come up there and hold me by the waist and try to make me swing. So I enjoyed that. But then again, on defense, that's how I could help the team out by making some plays out there. I used to have tremendous slumps hitting, but I can honestly say defensively in baseball, at least, I really never went into a slump. I always feel about the same all the way through the season.
Why did you decide? Because, I mean, you were starting to move up to play at the very highest levels as a hockey goalie. What was a determining factor for you of baseball rather than hockey?
I get asked that a lot. And to be quite honest, growing up in Detroit, I was known as the hockey guy, as a hockey player. Obviously, in Michigan, the baseball season is kind of short, especially in high school. And but hockey was long. Back then, we'd play 110, 120 games a year. And, I played on teams that won national championships, state championships, all that kind of stuff. I went and played junior hockey. I was offered all kinds of scholarships in college, Division I, by big schools. And quite honestly, I tell people, I wish I could have played them both. Like the Bo Jackson and Deion Sanders. I thought I was that good. I could have played hockey and baseball. But back in the late 70s and early 80s, you sort of had to make a choice. And I always liked hitting. I liked hitting the baseball. I liked that challenge of the one-on-one thing. And so I think that was ultimately what drove me to baseball at the University of Michigan. All 3 years I was there, I was always asked to play hockey by the hockey program. And I used to ask our coach, Bud Middaugh, if I could play a little hockey, and he said no. And that put an end to that. But I think it all ended up I had to choose. And the hitting part of baseball, which was fun, was the deciding factor of me choosing baseball over hockey.
When you go to Michigan, I mentioned earlier, you teamed up with Barry Larkin, who I remember him as an athlete coming out of high school. We're roughly the same age. You and I are roughly the same age. What do you remember about seeing him on a field or meeting him for the first time? You recall that going back? I know it's a long time ago.
Oh yeah, I remember it. Back then Michigan had some really good baseball teams. I played there 3 years. We went to the World Series twice. Finished seventh one year, and I think third the year Larkin was there. And to this day, I still think we had the best team in that College World Series that in 1983. But Texas was loaded. They had Roger Clemens and Calvin Schiraldi and Mike Capel. So they had some pitchers that could, obviously major league caliber. But I remember Barry. I'm a couple years older. So my last year at Michigan, he was a freshman, and he came in with a lot of hoopla. Moeller. I didn't know what I heard about Cincinnati Moeller. Growing up in Detroit, but I didn't know anything about Cincinnati. Had never been to Cincinnati in my life. I pretty much just Michigan and Canada. Mm-hmm. So I remember him. He was a high draft pick out of high school by the Reds. I don't know if he was a first rounder. He's either the first or second rounder. Mm-hmm. And he came to Michigan with a lot of hoopla. He had to choose between football and baseball. He chose baseball, and you could tell right away he was a little raw in that freshman year, like all of us were. Our freshman year in college, when you actually start playing baseball a little bit more. But you could just tell he had all the tools, all the 5 tools that you gauge players by, and you knew it was just a matter of time once he got the experience that he's going to be a great player. Now, did I think he was going to be a Hall of Fame type of player? No, but I definitely thought he was going to have a great collegiate career, which he did. And he was going to play in the big leagues someday as long as he stayed healthy. He was great.
You get drafted by the Reds. You sign and you're 5 years in the minor leagues. Now comes '88, and you're in big league camp. First of all, what was it like to play or just walk into a clubhouse, put on a uniform, and the guy standing at the other end of the dugout or standing next to you while you're taking BP is Pete Rose?
Oh, my God. I love Pete. Pete was great. And obviously, he liked me. I had been in spring training a couple times before, and he was always nice to me. I didn't play that much, but it was great being around all those guys, him and Buddy Bell, Dave Parker. Terry Francona was there for a year. Like I said, I'm a quiet guy for the most part. So I just sat. I remember me and Paul O'Neill. We were on the same track to the big leagues. We used to just sit in the corner there. Me number 50, and I forgot what number Paul was. I'm sure he was a high number. And we just sat there and listened to all of them. Pete telling stories, Dave Parker telling stories, and it was awesome. I love Pete. Obviously. He's a gigantic reason why I had the career I did in the major leagues. He believed in me, and I have nothing but good things to say about Peter Edward.
When you look back at '88 and you go on and you win the National League's Rookie of the Year award, when you're able to think back to spring training that year, and look, every player's got to have confidence, almost to the point where it's a big ego. They don't have to show it off to everybody, but you got to believe in yourself if anybody else is going to believe in you, right? Would you have thought in a million years when you show up in spring training in '88 that you'd be the Rookie of the Year in the National League?
I didn't think that. I never thought in those kind of terms as far as awards or anything. I would just, I always felt the same way in the minors and every level of ball I ever played. We won a state championship in high school. We went to the College World Series and in college. We won a few minor league championships when I was in the minor leagues, and I was fortunate enough to win in the major leagues, the World Series. I was more of a team goal type of guy, and I figured if I could help the team win, you get all the recognition you want. So that was my mindset. To your point of being confident, I don't think I was cocky, but I was always confident. Like I tell my players when I coach, and I've coached a long time in pros, and I coach the IMG Academy down here in Florida, their top team, and I got Akron's program started up there in Ohio. I have no idea how many times I went to bat in my whole life. I go, but I guarantee you that there hasn't been one time in that whole sequence of ABs, thousands and thousands and thousands of times that I did not think I was not going to get a hit. Every single, I didn't care if Nolan Ryan was on the mound, Clemens, Maddox, Smoltz, you name a pitcher. I thought I was going to get a hit. Obviously, that's not true. I mean, I was a 270 hitter in the big leagues, for God's sakes. So, but you have to have the confidence. I was always ready defensively. The ball's going to be hit to me. I'm going to pick it up, throw them out. I always knew where to throw the ball. So I don't know if that's confidence, but it's more of like I was always prepared. I was prepared to go. And still the most exciting moment of a baseball game for me was that walk from the on-deck circle, like a riverfront, going to the plate. That was exciting. They announce your name. You're walking up there, and now the battle begins with again, the Maddox, the Smoltz, David Cohns of the world. So, you have to be confident. But my mindset was always about teams. We won World Series once, and I honestly thought we were going to win a ton of them. But all we did was win one. I mean, Paul O'Neill's probably my best friend. And I go, dude, the best thing ever happened to you, you got traded the Yankees. You got to win four or five more titles. You're lucky. I wish they would have traded me with you. So, confidence is key to anything you do in life, honestly.
When you talk about that stroll to the plate, in very short order, you became a huge fan favorite in this town. I was still working here when you came up to the big leagues and working at Channel 5 and broadcasting initially with Johnny Bench and getting the Reds games on TV. And look, there were a lot of great stars on those teams and that group that you had all come up together, whether it was Eric Davis or Barry Larkin or Paul O'Neill or Cal Daniels, all these, Kurt Stillwell, Tracy Jones was even off to a great start early in his career before he got hurt. But there were a lot of these guys that came up together, but you were the guy that for whatever reason, and I'm curious why you think it's a reason, if you've ever thought about it at all, that seemed to have the greatest connection with the fans, even though, as you admitted earlier, you may not have been the most outgoing guy in the world. What do you think? Did you sense that connection with the Reds fans right almost from the get-go?
I guess. I mean, I was just thrilled to be playing, and you're right. I mean, I was nowhere near the top of the food chain as far as talent on those teams. With the Eric Davises and Larkins, and the Buddy Bells, and Paul, and I can go down the list of all the great players. I don't know why the fans. I wasn't from Cincinnati. I know how Cincinnati is. That they really like people from Cincinnati. I was a Detroiter. And I think they liked me because I tried hard, and maybe they just sensed that I wasn't the most talented guy on that team. I think I was an important guy in those teams, but I wasn't the most important guy. They could get away with me not playing, but I don't know if you can get away with Larkin missing 2 or 3 months. But I think I tried hard, and I wore those goggles, and I had a short haircut, so who knows. I wasn't the biggest guy around, and I enjoy signing autographs. And maybe that had to do with it. I thought that was part of the job. Try to sign as many autographs as you could, because these people came to the game, and this might be the only game they came to all year, and and if they get an autograph, I remember going to Detroit Tiger games, and I really wasn't into autographs, but if you yelled like Al Kaline's name or Norm Cash or Mickey Lolich and they gave you a little wave, I mean, that was a big deal. So maybe that was it. Maybe I signed a lot of autographs. I'm not a deep thinker in those kind of terms, so I never thought about it. I never worried about it one way or another. I did my best. When I went to the car or to a restaurant around town, and I remember seeing you and Bill Hemmer running around town in those early years. And that was fun. Yeah. And I like I tell people, 99.9% of the people I've ever met are good people. So that's the way I look at things.
Well, they still love you here. I mean, it's amazing. In our chat right now, the people are just bringing up memories of you as a player. That World Series, I was in I was already doing the Cubs games in 1990, but I had been asked to come back to do some stuff in the postseason with Channel 5. So I was traveling around during the league championship series against the Pirates and going to all the games, and then ultimately the World Series going to the games. But I remember being in Lou Piniella's office after you guys had just won the LCS. And Jimmy Stewart, you'll remember the legendary scout the Reds had, Jimmy Stewart. He was sitting in the office. I just happened to be in there. There were only about 4 or 5 of us on there. And Lou Piniella had said, Jimmy had brought this book like this thick. And it was his complete scouting report on the Oakland Athletics. And as Lou was opening the thing, Lou casually just says to him, hey, what do you think? And Jimmy Stewart says, you're going to sweep these guys. There's no doubt in my mind. Now, look, did he have a crystal ball? Of course not. But what I'm getting at ultimately here is, look, you guys were a young, emerging team. You're so young, that club. I mean, Buddy had moved on by then. Parker had moved on by then. It was the nucleus of a very young team, really outside of Browning. He wasn't all that old, truth be told, but Rijo and so forth on the mound. When you go to play the World Series, and this is a general question, do players get intimidated at all by the guys you're getting ready to go toe-to-toe with? I mean, you might think you can beat them, but is there an initial intimidation factor that maybe you had to get over before you played that Oakland team?
Well, you're asking that question to the wrong guy. I mean, I can only speak for myself. Like I mentioned earlier, I always thought I was going to get a hit, and I always thought we were going to kick ass. So, no, I could care less at the Oakland A's. I can care. They were big, muscular guys. So what? Big. If all you needed was muscles to hit a baseball, Arnold Schwarzenegger probably should have hit 1,000 home runs. but I'm sure he couldn't hit. So, no, I remember them coming to Riverfront and taking BP, and they were hitting balls in the red seats. And I said, that's great. Wait till they face Rio and Danny Jackson and see how they hit. So, no, we were very confident. Again, we were used to winning. Like I said, we were always in the playoffs in the minor leagues. We were always competing against championships. My first couple of years in the big leagues, we had good teams. So, yeah, we were very confident. Now, I don't think there was a guy in that clubhouse that didn't think we were going to win the World Series. But, no one could have no one would have said we'd have won 4 straight. But why not? Get it done. It's like pulling a Band-Aid. Pull it off quick.
You go 9 for 16. You hit the 2 home runs. Game 3, I think it was, against Mike Moore. And you pull off the sweep. You hit 583. You knock in 5. You even walk a couple of times. What do you think it is, Chris? And maybe there's no way of answering this question. I have no idea. But I find it just fascinating, and maybe it's just good luck or bad luck, or I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. But what is it about guys or being able to sort of tune out the noise of playing on the biggest stage with the most pressure? Do you think there's something to be said for that? Whether it's at the major league level, minor league level, collegiate level, summer league level. Do you sense there's just some guys that are able to do that?
Well, to be quite honest, my whole life has been that way in all the sports I've played. I always played the best in the biggest games. Hockey, the championship games, state championship, national championship games, baseball. I had problems in the run-of-the-mill games. That's why my hitting went up and down so much. I mean, I don't know if I get bored or, my mind would wander. I have no idea. But I always played good in big games in every sport, even now in golf. If I go play like a qualifier or something like that, I always seem to play a little bit better than I do just, playing beer golf with my buddies. So I don't know. For me, it was I had a real good ability to really concentrate, and crowd size or lack of crowd size didn't bother me one way or another. I mean, I won championships when there was nobody in the stands, and then I won championships when there was 50,000 people in the stands. So I just think it's the ability, the focus, and just concentrate on what you can do, and don't try to do anything you can't do. You know, I wasn't going to hit balls in the red seats. It'd be stupid for me to even try to do that. My goal was just try to hit the ball as hard as I could. You know, whether it was on the ground, line drive, if I happen to get under it, maybe a home run. But the ability to concentrate, I think, is special. And the bigger the game, the more I enjoyed it. I don't know why. I just thought it was more fun. People ask me, do I ever get nervous? I go, no, I never got nervous in any sport I've ever played. Now, do I get excited and anxious? Yeah. I don't think that's nervous. But I just look forward to it. You know, and then as a hitter, sometimes I got me in trouble a little bit. I really had to tone it down, you know, because I love swinging the bat, you know, so I'd swing at almost everything. So I had to tone it down and make sure I got a good pitch to hit. But I enjoyed those big games. I wish I could have played a lot more of them, to tell you the truth. And now the only thing I really got is golf. And I play this old man golf. But I still try to play in tournaments just to get that blood going a little bit and get a little bit of excitement.
Where are those specs now, by the way? You still got them, the ones you used to play in back in the days with the Red Legs?
No, I don't. I get asked that probably once a day somewhere. And I think the last ones I had, I gave to the Reds Hall of Fame. I think they're in there somewhere. And but I don't have any at home or maybe there's some in storage somewhere. If I, you know, once I'm dead and gone, the kids can go looking for them, and probably buried in some box with all the balls and bats I have. Probably my World Series ring's probably back in there too somewhere.
You play in 3 All-Star games, talked about your great defensive prowess down at third base. Injury certainly became a factor for you, as they do with so many others. As you look back and you talked about you wish you had a chance to play in more big games and more World Series and all that kind of things. But for you, as you look back on your career, you remember what the most?
Oh, baseball. I remember my first opening day, 1988 against St. Louis. Joe McGrain pitching. That's still the highlight of my baseball career. I got to the big leagues, and I remember we were playing in Louisville either the day or the day before opening day, and I remember I was playing and I was sitting in the dugout, and Pete come up to me. I was leaning on the rail, and Pete come up to him and gave me a little elbow, and he goes, "Hey, Spuds." I go, "Yeah," and he goes, "Buddy's not gonna be able to go on opening day, so you're in there." I said, "I'm ready, Skip. Let's go." And so I was all excited, and I remember calling my parents and stuff like that, saying, "Hey, I'm not going to be on the bench opening day. I'm going to be starting. I don't know where I'm going to be hitting and what spot of the order, but I'll be playing against the Cardinals on the opening day." And I got my first hit. I don't know if I might have had a couple plays. I don't remember that, but I do remember getting a hit. Sort of got jammed a little bit and hit it in the short left field.
I want to focus now a little bit more, Chris, on your post-playing career. You get into coaching,
Yeah.
and you're a positive guy by nature. I mean, I read a lot of articles about you coming up to this interview today, and you talk a lot about the importance of being positive. There's no sense in planting negative thoughts or things like that into players' minds. But you're also a tell-it-like-it-is kind of a guy. So sometimes those two things can cross over to one another. I asked Bob Huggins this question a few weeks ago about young players. Do they want to be coached? Do they want to be coached hard? From what you see, do you think they still want to be coached hard?
I do. I do. As long as you're respectful. You know. I'm not a guy to be dropping F-bombs on guys in like that. I think if you're respectful and if you're actually, believe it or not, I'm actually a pretty good coach. Because once I start doing that, I'm really talkative. You know, I'm from the old Jimmy Hoff, Cincinnati Reds. I still got Jimmy Hoff's, the old Reds player development guy, his playbook. And I use the same plays for the last 40 years. They still work. They're still great. I still use the same signs. But yeah, I think they do. And like I said, I've coached pro. I work with Votto and the Bruces of the world, and I went to IMG Academy down here. Had first and second round guys, and elite high school players. Then went and coached D1 college ball. Yeah, they want to be coached. It's different. I mean, you got to adjust. Like I said, I'm 61 years old. I mean, I got to know who Rihanna is. I got to know who all this stuff is. It doesn't mean I do Twitter or any of that kind of nonsense. But you still have to be aware and try to relate in their terms. But as long as they think that you're trying to help them become a better player, I think they're positive. And like you said, I am short and blunt, and sometimes that's caused me problems in my life. But I think it's honest. Like I said, why pussy around the bush? Just get right to the point. And that's all I wanted as a player. Either tell me I stink or tell me I'm good. Either or. If I stink, I'll try to get better. If I'm good, I'll try to get even better. So, yeah, I agree with Huggins. He's older than me, I'm sure. So, trying to make him get better, and you got to watch yourself a little bit as far as your language and stuff like that. Kids it's not the same world as it was when I was playing. Trust me. Some of the coaches I had in hockey and in baseball 40, 45 years ago would probably be in jail now, the way the world is. But, yeah, you got to adjust. My big thing in all sports is adjustments. You got to adjust when you're hitting. It's not adjusting game to game. It's adjusting pitch to pitch, depending on what this guy has and what you have that day. Hitting wise, you don't have the same bat speed every day. It's just the way it is. So you got to go with what you got. In golf, you don't have the same swing every day. If I normally hit a little draw, and today it's not drawing as much, it's sort of going a little straight, maybe a little right. You got to adjust. You got to go with that today. So I enjoy coaching the young guys now. It sort of gives you a thrill because I can't play anymore. I can't run. I can't slide. But you can teach those guys to do that and try to do it the right way. Even though we didn't have good teams in college, I was proud of the way they played. And they all tried hard, and they all tried to listen to what we were trying to do, and they all got better. Did they become good enough to be a pro player? No, but from the time they entered the program to the time they exited, they got better. And as a coach, that's all you can hope for, trying to get everybody a little bit better.
Well, I liked your comments, Chris, when you talked about while you were still in the middle of that whole relaunching of the Akron baseball program, and I don't think anybody has any idea except for a guy like you and a few others that have been through it, on what that's got to be like to try and literally start up and find players and a bunch of walk-on guys and tryouts and all that sort of stuff. But I liked your comments very much, and Coach Huggins said a lot of the same, and there are a lot of coaches that certainly feel this way. Not all of them, but I think overwhelming majority, most of them. You talked about how you felt it was also your responsibility to ultimately make them not only better players, but one day better people, better husbands, better dads.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, Barry Bonds is by far the best player I've ever seen. To me, it's not even close. You can say it whatever you want about whatever. But he was awesome. He was awesome to watch. Best player. But even him, Babe Ruth, by the time they're 40 years old, they're done. And hopefully you're going to have another 30, 40 years of life left. There's more to life than that. So, I mean, you got to be a good guy. You got to try to teach these kids stuff besides baseball. I think sports is a good avenue to teach life lessons, and you got to teach them. Hey, don't treat people like that. Now, why are you yelling at that guy? If that guy says hello, say hello. It's common courtesy. So yeah, I agree. You teach them baseball, but in the same sense, you try to teach them how to live their life a little bit, how to be responsible. I think that's the biggest thing, responsibility. Hey, I've screwed up with the best of them. Made terrible mistakes in my life, but you learn from them. That's what my dad and my parents used to say. You're going to make mistakes. I'm a very spiritual guy. I mean, you're going to make mistakes, but that's what forgiveness is all about. So I believe that wholeheartedly. So yeah, when I teach, it's not only about baseball. It's not about hitting and fielding and how to slide properly, how to take a lead off. It's also, hey, what are you going to do out of the field? Like an old grizzled minor league coach I had a long time ago. Nothing good happens after midnight, so get your ass back in bed. So I used to tell kids that all the time. Well, what the hell are you out at 2 o'clock in the morning for? Get your ass back in bed. That's when all the bad stuff happens.
I wish my dad would have told me that.
Well, yeah. We're all guilty of that at some point.
There's no doubt about it. When you left Akron just a year ago, I've always felt like, and look, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but I've always felt like there are certain guys by their approach, and we've heard a lot about your approach and your mental makeup and that kind of thing. And look, I don't work for the Reds anymore, so I'm not beholden to anybody down there anymore. They're not signing a paycheck. But I always saw it even the years I was working there and the years I was working for somebody else. There are certain guys that should be working inside of certain franchises. You called this place your home for a long, long time. Now you're down in Florida, and that's awesome. But, if the situation presented itself, would you be open to once again putting on a Reds uniform at some level and getting back out there and coaching again because you have so much to still give back?
Oh, well, I mean, honestly, I mean, I've asked the Reds for over a decade to come back, and I don't want to be in the big leagues. I want to work with player development. That's the key to making this franchise. I mean, it still upsets me that the franchise is doing what they're doing. It's the oldest franchise. It's every bit as historic as the Yankees or as the Dodgers, or the heated rival when I was playing. And I want them to get back there. I was with the general manager, Nick Kroll, on the Caravan. And, I was asked that many a time on the Caravan by the fans and stuff, how come you're not in the organization helping out? And I go, it's not for lack of trying, believe me. But they have their own way of doing things, and that's fine. But I think I would have a lot to offer. I'm not irrelevant. I've been coaching young kids for the last 10 years, 10, 12 years. So it's not that. And I'm in good shape at 61. I still throw batting practice for hours and fungos and all that kind of good stuff. But yeah, to answer your question, I would love to be in player development, trying to help this organization get back to not only the playoffs, but getting back to the World Series and winning another one. I mean, it's approaching one of the longest droughts in Reds history as far as winning a World Series. I mean, it's got to be close. It's been 33 years. So I would love to do that one more time. Really, the Reds organization is the only organization I'd probably do this with at this point in my life, because I have a deep feeling in my heart for that organization. I mean, I've been approached even since I retired in June by a few organizations and that kind of stuff about doing some baseball stuff. And I said, nah, it's not really the time yet. But if the Reds approach me, sure, I'd love to do it. And I'm easy. I mean, I want to work with the young guys. So when they come up through the organization, they're ready to go. You shouldn't have to wait till they get to the big leagues to know what the hell you're doing. And I bring up Jimmy Hoff, his name a lot, because he meant a lot to us. He taught everyone when I was coming up the Reds way, and it was a special way, special plays. We do cutoffs this way, we field bunts this way, we lead off bases this way, we wear a uniform a certain way, and I always bring him up because he had a great effect. He just passed away a couple years ago, but he had a great effect on me, and like I told Nick, I told him straight up. I mean, it all starts with player development. There's no reason in hell that Cleveland and Tampa Bay can have the type of program they have, and the Reds don't. St. Louis, Come on. We're better than that. And I believe that wholeheartedly. And Nick said some good stuff on the caravan, and I hope it works out. And Annie, my daughter's working for the Reds as far as for a TV girl. So for her sake, it's more fun telecasting when the team's doing well than we're doing bad. So that's a long way of saying yes. I would love to do it, but I'm almost to the point. I really don't ask anymore. I've done that for years, and you pretty much get to run around. And this is my 4th time retiring in various aspects of my life. I'm enjoying golf, but it's getting baseball season, and I am getting the itch to do stuff. So, might have to go do some private lessons or something around here with some of my buddies so I can start throwing batting practice and hit some fungos again.
When you look at the state of baseball, Chris, and I'm curious, and look, I'm not a fan of the whole sabermetrics thing, and I understand a lot of information is a really good thing, but if a guy hits a ball and his exit velocity is 120 miles an hour, but it's caught in center field for an out, I'd rather have the guy that just hit the ball 90 miles an hour that floats one a jam shot over the third baseman's head for a base hit. Okay, end of story for me. Now, everybody might feel differently about that. But do you think, what's your feeling about the whole movement and evolution of the game and being largely centered on sabermetrics?
Well, I think that's a tool. It just can't be the only tool. Hey, listen. If I'm managing, and you give me some stats and all that kind of stuff, that hey, this guy hits the ball this way 80% of the time on the ground. Yeah, that's good information. But all this exit velocity and stuff like that, that's all good. But I used to tell big leaguers, it's fine. They have the supreme talent. Now, my kids, like in high school and college, they're trying to hit the ball like the big leaguers. Oh, my exit velocity is this way. And they hit the ball in the air, and to your point, they hit the ball in the air and it goes to the warning track. It doesn't work. You can only hit the ball in the air if you can do 2 things. You can hit the ball over the outfielder's head and hit it over the fence. Those are the 2 things. If you're incapable of hitting the ball in the air and doing any of those 2 things, you shouldn't be hitting the ball in the air. You should be hitting the ball on the ground, hitting line drives. Well, now, I'm not the biggest guy. I could hit a home run here and there. But I was always taught that just hit the ball hard. Don't try to lift it. Don't try to do anything. When I was playing, it was a line drive. So I had to hit a hard line drive. If you got under a little bit, it could go out. If you got on top of it a little bit, you hit a hard ground ball. I think sabermetrics and all that analytics stuff is good. It's not the end all. Baseball's played in actual dirt, grass, heat, rain, cold, and it's all relative of what's going on at that particular time. Like I said earlier, guys don't feel the same. I could be 0 for 20 against David Cone, but I could be feeling great that day, and Cone could be off a little bit. All of a sudden, that 0 for 20 doesn't mean anything because he's horse shit and I'm feeling good. I get a couple hits, So I think all that stuff is just a tool. You analyze it and you use it the best of your ability. But eventually, it comes down to mano a mano, guy against guy. And all those stats in the world, they all make mistakes. They're not robots out there. Mm-hmm. They're not playing on a computer. They're out there. Garrett Cole is going to hang a slider one of these times. Trust me. And that's the ball you jump on. Now, if he throws that slider the way he's supposed to, you're toast. But, I have enough experience to know he ain't that good. He's going to hang a couple. And those are the ones you capitalize
on. You have a son-in-law that is a professional golfer trying to get his way to the point of getting on the PGA Tour. I have to believe, and maybe I'm 1,000% wrong, I have no idea. You're able to get out and play with him. You may not be able to play as well as him, obviously, but I would imagine that it would probably be a smart idea for him to lean on you a little bit more on the mental part of the game. Does he do that?
Well, he is on the PGA Tour.
Okay, I beg your pardon. Okay.
Yeah, he's actually he's in the field this week at the Honda Classic down here in West Palm in Florida. So I know Annie, and his dad's caddying for him. His dad, Jim, his name's Kevin Roy. His dad's name's Jim Roy. And Kevin, yeah, I played with him many times. He's got all the tools. I played with a lot of PGA guys, and he's good enough to make it. But again, it's just like baseball. Once you get to the major leagues, everybody can play. Everybody's good. So how do you separate yourself? And to your point, I believe it is mental, mentally tough, being able to handle the adversity, be able to handle the bad times as well as the good times. That's a science too, handling the good times. But yeah, I think I'm a good guy for mental, but I don't stick my nose into where it's not wanted or where it's not asked. Now, if Kevin would ask me about some stuff, I'd be more than willing to give my opinion. But I'm sort of old school in the way. I'm just not gonna. First of all, he's not my parent. He's my son-in-law. He's not my son. He's my son-in-law. And I've told Annie, I go, hey, if he ever wants to talk mentally, even though I never played golf at his level, I did play sports at a high level in a few sports, and I know the importance of the mental aspect, because all those guys are good. I mean, the difference between him and Rory McIlroy isn't much. It's just a sliver. And what's the difference? If all things are equal, you work out, you practice. It's the mental, the mental aspect. How do you handle it? How do you handle? When all of a sudden you're 5 under after 7 holes. The good players keep going, try to make 5 under, 10 under. Or does 5 under? Once you get the 5 under, you get nervous, and all of a sudden you turn the 5 under into 2 under. You turn a potential great round into a good round. But the players that make it out there just keep the when it's going good, you keep it going. I remember talking to Carl Yastrzemski, the great baseball player for the Red Sox for years, and he used to talk about waves. In baseball, you're hitting, you're in waves. You're at the bottom of a wave, or you're on the top of the wave surfing. And once you're on top, you got to ride that all the way to the beach. Ride that wave as far as you can, because eventually you're going to fall off and hit the skids. So I think you can use that analogy for any sport. Once you're playing good, take advantage of it. Try to get as low as possible, and do that. He hasn't come to me yet, but if he does, I'd be more than happy to talk to him.
Lastly, you mentioned your daughter Annie, and she has just done, and I don't say this because you're on the show. I was talking about this with Brandon Seho and Paul Fritchner and Casey McCollister about this. What a great job she has done, but she's earned her stripes. When I had a chance to talk to her a year ago, she's busting her tail with a Big Ten network. She was doing some stuff down there in Florida and all that kind of thing. It's got to be really cool for you. To see her doing what she's doing now, and especially doing it with the Cincinnati Reds.
Oh yeah, like you said, obviously you're in the business. It's very competitive, just like sports. It's very tough, and it's very tough to get from the minor leagues to the major leagues in broadcasting. So yeah, she's paid her dues. I mean, she's been in Corpus Christi. She's been all over the place. Trying to follow her dreams. She's always wanted to do this, and I think she's pretty good. Like anything else, you got to keep getting better. And I think it's a great opportunity for her with the Reds. I mean, she grew up in Cincinnati. She went to school in Cincinnati, high school. So she is a Cincinnati girl. So she loves the Reds, and she's fortunate to have this gig. And I'm just waiting for her to get her schedule so me and Susan can plan our times when we're going to go up and see her and see my mom up in Cincinnati. And but she does good. But like you said, as you know, she works hard. She tries to prepare the best she can. She's a hard worker, always trying to improve. And but it's tough. It's a tough business. So I've talked to her quite a bit about the mental side of stuff, and because it can be, as you know, it can be a brutal business. It's brutal.
Well, there's no doubt about that. But, Chris, I tell you, man, this has been just fantastic having you on the show. And I know so many Reds fans that are in on this chat while we're doing this show are just so excited to have you. And everybody would love to see you back. Nobody more than me. Growing up a Reds fan, nobody would be happier to see you back in some form or fashion working with the Cincinnati Reds again. And hopefully when you get into town this summer, hopefully we'll have a chance to catch up and say hello in person. Can't thank you enough for your time today, man.
All right, Tom. Yeah, I'll definitely contact you. Maybe we'll go out and get a hamburger or something.
That'd be great. I'm all in. Chris, all the best, man. Tell Susan and the kids hello, all right?
All right. Thank you.
All right. Chris Sabo. Boy, how good was that?